Rain hammered against the hospital windows, hard enough to sound violent. Sebastian hated hospitals. They smelled like chemicals, bad coffee, and lawsuits waiting to happen. His eyelids felt heavy. His chest burned. Somewhere nearby, machines beeped in steady rhythm. Alive, annoying. The last thing Sebastian remembered was headlights cutting across wet asphalt before a truck slammed into his car. Then darkness. Now this. A voice suddenly shrieked nearby. "Ellis, stop pretending to be asleep and apologize to your brother." Sebastian opened his eyes slowly. A woman stood beside the hospital bed, wearing enough diamonds to blind small nations. Her face twisted with disgust. Behind her stood a young man pretending to cry. A middle-aged man checked his watch like this entire scene interrupted something more important, like tax fraud. Sebastian frowned. None of these people looked familiar. "What?" he rasped. "The hell are you people?" The room went silent. The crying boy gasped dramatically. "Mom, he's doing it again." "Again?" The woman snapped forward. "How dare you speak to me like that after what you did to Colin?" Sebastian stared at her, then at the crying decorative candle behind her, then back at her. "I don't know who Colin is," he said flatly. "But if he cries this much daily, someone should water him less." The boy choked. The older man looked horrified. The woman nearly exploded. "You ungrateful little." A sharp pain slammed into Sebastian's head. Images flooded him instantly. Cold bedrooms. Bruises hidden under sleeves. A boy kneeling silently while people screamed at him. Wedding photos where the groom never smiled. A lonely figure sitting alone at birthday parties. Ellis. The memories hit hard enough to make Sebastian grip the bed sheets. Not his memories. Someone else's. Oh. This was bad. Very bad. Human consciousness transfer, possession, identity displacement. Whatever name science eventually gave it, Sebastian wanted a refund immediately. The crying brother stepped closer carefully. "Brother, are you okay?" Sebastian looked at him. Colin Warren. Stepmother's son. Professional victim. Part-time snake. According to Ellis's memories, Colin had spent years stealing everything from him. Attention, praise, friends, even this marriage. Interesting. Sebastian smiled suddenly. Colin stepped back instinctively. Smartest thing he'd done all day. The woman crossed her arms. "You embarrassed Colin at the charity dinner, and now the Ashford family is furious. Your husband hasn't visited once since you were hospitalized." Sebastian blinked. Husband. Right. The memories returned again. Nathaniel Ashford. Cold, wealthy, emotionally constipated alpha. Married Ellis only because the Warren family forced the arrangement through a business deal. Worse, Nathaniel had been obsessed with his dead first love for years. Apparently, he treated grief like a personality trait. Sebastian almost admired the dedication to misery. Almost. The father finally spoke. "Once you leave the hospital, stop causing trouble. The Ashford contract matters more than your feelings." Sebastian slowly turned toward him. "Did you just say that to your son?" The man frowned. "Watch your tone." "No," Sebastian said quietly. "I don't think I will." The room froze because Ellis Warren never fought back. Never raised his voice. Never looked people in the eye. But Sebastian Cross had once bankrupted a company during lunch because their CEO interrupted dessert. Different species entirely. The stepmother sneered. "You should be grateful we even kept you after your mother died." Something cold entered Sebastian's expression. Ellis's memories trembled painfully inside him. A staircase. A crying woman. A cheating husband screaming while another woman watched smugly. His mother collapsing from stress years later. Sebastian's jaw tightened. "You mean after your affair killed her?" he asked softly. Dead silence. Colin whispered, "Mom?" The woman's face turned red instantly. "You disgusting little." She raised her hand. Sebastian caught her wrist mid-air effortlessly. The woman stared at him in shock. "So this is why Ellis stopped defending himself," Sebastian said calmly. "Because you people are insane. The father slammed a hand onto the bed rail. Enough. Sebastian looked at him lazily. No. Something terrifying flickered behind his eyes. For years, you abused your son, stole his mother's company shares, married your mistress, forced him into a business marriage, and expected obedience in return. You're either confident no one can stop you, or incredibly stupid. The father looked genuinely stunned. Good. People like him relied on fear. Sebastian had none left to give. Colin suddenly stepped forward with trembling eyes. Brother, please don't be angry. Mom was only worried about me. Sebastian turned slowly. Ellis's memories whispered again. Colin crying on purpose whenever Ellis received attention. Colin lying about injuries. Colin stealing credit for Ellis's work. Colin secretly telling Nathaniel that Ellis trapped him into marriage. What a fascinating little parasite. Sebastian smiled warmly. You know, he said, if manipulation was an Olympic sport, you'd finally make your parents proud. Colin's face cracked. The stepmother shrieked. A nurse burst into the room in panic. What is happening here? Sebastian pointed at the family. Emotional terrorism, mostly. 2 hours later, the Warren family left furious after Sebastian threatened to expose old financial records publicly. Now the hospital room finally felt quiet. Sebastian leaned back against the pillows, then nearly jumped when a soft voice echoed inside his head. You really said all that? Sebastian went still. The voice sounded fragile, nervous, young. Not his own. He closed his eyes slowly. Ellis, either I'm hallucinating, Sebastian muttered internally, or you're sharing brain space with me. A long silence followed. Then, I'm sorry. Sebastian frowned instantly. For what? For dragging you into this. Ellis sounded genuinely guilty, like existing itself required permission. Sebastian rubbed his forehead. This family abused you for years. Your husband ignored you. And somehow you're apologizing to me? Incredible. Humans really will apologize for weather conditions if given enough trauma. A tiny sound escaped Alice. Not crying, a laugh. Small, weak, rusty from disuse. Sebastian paused, then sighed. Great. Now he cared. Terrible development. What exactly happened before the accident? Sebastian asked internally. Ellis hesitated. I overheard my father talking. He said once the Ashford contract finished, they'd send me away permanently. Sebastian's expression darkened. And I think the hospital accident wasn't accidental. That got Sebastian's full attention. Outside the room, thunder cracked across the sky. Inside, Sebastian smiled slowly, coldly. Because if someone caused both accidents intentionally, then this situation had transformed from inconvenient to personal. And Sebastian Cross was many things. Merciful was not one of them. Nathaniel Ashford hated hospitals, almost as much as he hated emotional conversations. Unfortunately, his mother loved both. You should visit your spouse, Evelyn Ashford said sharply while adjusting her silk gloves. People are talking. Nathaniel barely looked up from the contract in his hands. Let them. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Your dead lover has been gone for 5 years. Continuing to punish Ellis for existing makes you look pathetic. Nathaniel's jaw tightened instantly. There it was, the family hobby of poking emotional landmines for entertainment. He agreed to the marriage, Nathaniel said coldly. Evelyn gave him a look usually reserved for disappointing politicians. That boy looked terrified during the entire wedding. Nathaniel said nothing because it was true. Ellis Warren had stood beside him in white formal wear, looking pale enough to disappear into the flowers. Quiet, polite, painfully easy to ignore. Nathaniel had done exactly that. At the time, he told himself it was easier this way. No attachment, no expectations, no betrayal. Simple. Except apparently his simple arrangement now involved public rumors, hospital scandals, and his spouse threatening the Warren family, like an unhinged lawyer possessed by caffeine and vengeance. His assistant cleared his throat carefully. Sir, there's also another issue. Nathaniel looked up. The Warren family says Mr. Warren has been acting strangely since the accident. Nathaniel snorted lightly. Strangely how? He threw tea at Madam Warren and called Colin Warren an emotionally manipulative houseplant. Nathaniel slowly lowered the contract. Interesting. Very interesting. Because Ellis Warren usually apologized when people stepped on his shoes. Meanwhile, this version apparently fought like he had unresolved war crimes. Evelyn looked delighted. Oh, I like him already. Nathaniel ignored her. Half an hour later, he walked into Ellis's hospital room expecting awkward silence. Instead, he found Ellis sitting cross-legged on the bed, eating expensive fruit while reading financial reports. The sight alone felt wrong. Ellis noticed him immediately, then smiled. Not warmly, predatory. Nathaniel stopped walking. You look healthy. Thank you, Ellis replied. Near-death experiences really improve skin quality. Highly recommend. Nathaniel blinked once. Who is this person? The voice was the same, the face was the same, but the atmosphere felt completely different. Before, Ellis always looked fragile, like someone waiting for permission to breathe. Now he lounged against hospital pillows like he owned the building. Nathaniel watched him carefully. You insulted the Warren family. Ellis bit into an apple. Several times. You embarrassed Colin publicly. He survived. Miraculously. Nathaniel frowned. This shouldn't have been entertaining. And yet, against his better judgment, something dangerous flickered in his chest. Interest. Ellis tilted his head slightly. You're staring. You've changed. Death gives people hobbies. Nathaniel moved closer slowly. The closer he got, the stranger this felt. For months, Ellis had barely looked him in the eye. Now he held Nathaniel's gaze without hesitation, steady, sharp, fearless. It irritated Nathaniel immediately. Naturally, this irritation made him want to stay longer. Human psychology remained a poorly designed disaster. You should stop provoking your family, Nathaniel said finally. Ellis laughed softly. Nathaniel froze again, not because of the sound, but because Ellis's laugh held genuine amusement instead of nervous restraint. You know what's fascinating? Ellis said. Everyone keeps telling the victim to behave better instead of telling abusers to stop being monsters. Nathaniel's expression cooled. You think you're a victim? Ellis lowered the apple slowly. The room became quiet. Then he asked calmly, Do you know what your husband's favorite food is? Nathaniel didn't answer. Favorite color? Silence. What medicine he's allergic to? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Ellis smiled faintly. Exactly. For the first time since entering the room, Nathaniel felt uncomfortable. Not angry, not defensive, uncomfortable. Because the truth sat there between them like broken glass. He knew almost nothing about Ellis Warren. Not because Ellis hid himself, but because Nathaniel never cared enough to ask. Inside Sebastian's mind, Ellis whispered weakly, You don't have to say this. Sebastian mentally rolled his eyes. You spent 2 years married to this emotionally unavailable refrigerator. I'm saying everything. A tiny embarrassed noise echoed in his head. Cute, in a psychologically concerning way. Nathaniel suddenly spoke. You're blaming me for your family's actions. No, Ellis replied evenly. I blame you for watching it happen and deciding it wasn't your problem. That landed. Nathaniel's expression hardened instantly. Careful, Ellis said with a grin. There's the famous Ashford intimidation technique. Very dramatic. Needs originality. Nathaniel stepped closer to the bed. Most people backed away when he looked at them like this. Ellis looked entertained instead. Do you want something from me? Nathaniel asked quietly. Yes. What? Divorce papers. Nathaniel stared at him. Unexpected irritation flashed through him. Fast, sharp, ridiculous. You wanted this marriage. No, Ellis corrected calmly. I wanted survival. Different thing. Nathaniel suddenly remembered the wedding again. Ellis standing silently while his father handled negotiations. Colin crying dramatically in another room. The Warren family pushing Ellis forward like disposable packaging. At the time, Nathaniel had ignored the discomfort in his gut because none of it concerned him. Now that memory felt uglier. Ellis leaned back lazily. Relax. I know you're still emotionally married to your dead lover. The air turned dangerous instantly. Nathaniel's voice dropped coldly. Don't talk about him. Ellis studied him for a moment, then sighed. You know what your problem is? Nathaniel crossed his arms. You confuse grief with loyalty. That hit harder than expected. For a second, Nathaniel genuinely couldn't speak. Because somewhere deep down, beneath years of bitterness and guilt, he knew that sentence was true. His first love had died years ago, but Nathaniel stayed frozen beside that grave emotionally, using loss as an excuse to avoid living. Ellis continued quietly. And while you were worshipping memories, you ignored the living person right in front of you. Silence swallowed the room. Inside Sebastian's head, Ellis whispered shakily. Why are you helping me? Sebastian answered immediately. Because someone should have years ago. The silence afterward felt painfully soft. Nathaniel finally exhaled slowly. You really are different. Sebastian almost answered honestly. You have no idea. But before he could speak, the hospital television suddenly switched to breaking news. Shares of Warren Corporation are falling after anonymous allegations of internal fraud connected to senior executives. Ellis's eyes sharpened instantly. Interesting timing. Too interesting. Then his phone buzzed. A text message appeared from an unknown number. Stop digging, or the next accident won't fail. Sebastian stared at the screen, then smiled slowly, cold enough to freeze oceans. Across from him, Nathaniel noticed. And for the first time since meeting Ellis Warren, Nathaniel Ashford felt afraid for someone else. By the next morning, Sebastian had 3 confirmed facts. First, someone inside Warren Corporation was panicking. Second, Ellis's father was absolutely involved in financial fraud. Third, Nathaniel Ashford kept showing up everywhere like an emotionally confused security guard. Sebastian walked into the Ashford mansion dining room wearing Ellis's usual soft beige clothes. Except now, somehow, they looked expensive instead of apologetic. Amazing what basic self-respect did for posture. Nathaniel sat at the table reading financial reports. His coffee remained untouched. Interesting. A man who usually functioned through caffeine withdrawal and hostility looked distracted. Sebastian sat across from him. Nathaniel glanced up briefly. You're awake early. You sound disappointed. I'm cautious. Same thing with richer vocabulary. Nathaniel ignored that. A servant placed breakfast plates carefully between them. The atmosphere remained tense for exactly 7 seconds before Sebastian picked up his juice and casually asked, So, how long were you planning to emotionally imprison yourself over your dead boyfriend? The servant almost dropped a tray. Nathaniel looked up slowly. You wake up every morning and choose violence. No, Sebastian said while buttering toast. Violence usually chooses me first. Inside his mind, Ellis groaned softly. You can't keep provoking him. He keeps surviving it, Sebastian replied internally. Honestly, I'm starting to respect the durability. Nathaniel placed his utensils down carefully. You know nothing about my relationship with Julian. Sebastian noticed it immediately. Not love, not him. Julian, using the name, made the grief human instead of mythical. Good. Dead people shouldn't become altars people sacrifice their lives to forever. That was unhealthy and also deeply inconvenient for everyone nearby. I know enough, Sebastian replied calmly. You loved him, you lost him, and now you punish yourself by refusing to move on. Nathaniel's jaw flexed once. You think recovery is that simple? No, Sebastian answered honestly. I think hiding inside grief is simpler. That landed badly. Excellent. Nathaniel stood abruptly, the chair scraping sharply across marble. You're becoming arrogant. Sebastian looked unimpressed. And you're becoming emotionally defensive. We all have hobbies. Nathaniel stared at him for a long moment before leaving the dining room without another word. The servant whispered under his breath as soon as Nathaniel disappeared. "Sir, respectfully, how are you still alive?" Sebastian smiled faintly. "Excellent reflexes." By noon, Sebastian sat inside Ellis's old bedroom at the Warren estate, surrounded by financial documents. "Well, borrowed aggressively." "Same difference." Ellis spoke quietly inside his head. "I used to organize those files for father." Sebastian flipped another page. "And he rewarded your hard work by stealing your inheritance. Human parenting continues disappointing me." The documents confirmed everything. Ellis's mother originally owned 60% of Warren Corporation shares. After her death, those shares should have transferred to Ellis legally. Instead, Ellis's father forged temporary guardianship clauses and transferred operational control to himself for asset protection. Translation: theft wearing a necktie. Sebastian's expression darkened. Then the bedroom door opened violently. Colin stormed inside dramatically. Naturally, the man entered rooms like soap opera. Background music followed him everywhere. "You've been spying on father." Sebastian didn't even look up. "You've been breathing loudly for 2 minutes outside the door." Colin froze, then immediately switched tactics. Tears filled his eyes. Impressive. No emotional transition period whatsoever. Olympic-level manipulation. "Brother," Colin whispered shakily, "why are you treating us like enemies?" Sebastian finally looked at him. "Because you are." Colin flinched. "You stole my marriage," Sebastian continued. "My inheritance. My mother's company. My father's attention. Frankly, I'm surprised you didn't steal oxygen too." "That's not true." Sebastian held up a document calmly. "This signature here belongs to your mother during a period when she was vacationing overseas. Which means either she learned teleportation or someone committed fraud." Colin's face lost color instantly. There it was. Fear. Real fear, not fake crying. Sebastian leaned back slowly. "Tell me something, Colin. Did you know they planned to kill Ellis eventually?" Colin's breathing stopped. Tiny reaction. Tiny mistake. Sebastian noticed immediately. Inside his head, Ellis trembled. "They wouldn't." "They would," Sebastian answered internally, voice colder now. "People willing to destroy you slowly usually aren't picky about methods." Colin suddenly snapped. "You think you're better than us now?" Sebastian blinked. "Better than people who abused a grieving child for 15 years. He tilted his head thoughtfully. "Yes, massively." Colin grabbed the papers angrily. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Sebastian said lightly, "I already sent copies to my lawyer this morning." Colin froze. Then the bedroom door opened again. Nathaniel stepped inside. Silence hit instantly. Colin looked alarmed. "Nathaniel, thank God. Ellis has gone insane." Nathaniel's gaze shifted between them slowly, then landed on the scattered financial files. His expression sharpened immediately. "What are these?" Sebastian answered first. "Evidence." Colin snapped. "He's lying." Nathaniel picked up one document quietly. The longer he read, the colder his face became. Ah, there it was. The terrifying Hartwell business mode people warned others about. Even Colin stepped backward instinctively. Nathaniel looked at him once. "Leave." Colin paled. "But..." "Now." Colin left immediately. Cowardice. Nature's fastest transportation method. Once the door closed, Nathaniel placed the file down carefully. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before?" Sebastian almost laughed. Ellis whispered sadly inside him. "Because I knew nobody would care." That hurt more than Sebastian expected. So he answered out loud instead. "Would you have listened?" Nathaniel said nothing. "Exactly." Sebastian stood and walked toward the window. Rain clouds gathered outside again. Dramatic weather continued stalking this family. Very committed atmosphere. "You know," Sebastian said quietly, "Ellis used to wait for you." Nathaniel looked up sharply. "Every night after dinner. Even when you ignored him for weeks." even when your staff treated him like furniture. Nathaniel's face changed slightly, not defensive this time. Ashamed. He kept thinking maybe if he tried harder, you'd eventually see him. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Breathing. Sebastian turned around. But now, he said calmly, it's too late. Something dangerous flickered across Nathaniel's expression. Panic. Small, barely visible, but there. And Sebastian suddenly understood. Nathaniel Ashford was falling in love with Ellis right when Ellis had finally stopped loving him back. Beautiful. Poetic. Absolutely deserved. Nathaniel stepped closer slowly. What do you want from me? Sebastian answered instantly. Nothing. That hit harder than screaming ever could. Nathaniel stared at him for several long seconds before asking quietly, is there really no chance left? Inside Sebastian's mind, Ellis went painfully silent. Sebastian looked directly at Nathaniel, then spoke with brutal honesty. You didn't notice him when he was breaking, so you don't get to keep him now that he's healed. Nathaniel Ashford did not sleep that night, which was inconvenient because billion-dollar mergers apparently still required consciousness. He sat alone in his office, staring at the city lights, while Sebastian's words replayed endlessly in his head. You didn't notice him when he was breaking. The sentence carved straight through him because it was true. Not partially true, not emotionally exaggerated. True in the ugliest possible way. Nathaniel remembered every moment now with horrifying clarity. Ellis sitting quietly at dinner while everyone talked over him. Ellis waiting near the front door whenever Nathaniel came home late. Ellis learning Nathaniel's coffee preferences despite Nathaniel never learning anything about him. Tiny, invisible things. The kind people only noticed after they were already gone. Human beings really were experts at valuing someone 5 minutes after destroying them. Pathetic species. A knock interrupted the silence. Enter. His assistant stepped inside carefully. Sir, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Nathaniel rubbed his forehead tiredly. And Warren Corporation? The assistant hesitated. Internal investors are turning against Chairman Warren. Someone anonymously leaked evidence of asset fraud online last night. Nathaniel already knew who. Or rather, whoever Ellis had become. The terrifying part was that Nathaniel no longer wanted to stop him. The terrifying part was that Nathaniel wanted to help. Meanwhile, across the city, Sebastian sat inside a luxury cafe, wearing sunglasses while Ellis panicked internally. This is illegal. Sebastian sipped coffee calmly. No, insider trading is illegal. This is revenge with paperwork. You hack their private accounts. I delegated hacking. Important distinction. On the table sat 3 phones, confidential financial records, and a blueberry tart Sebastian had stolen from another meeting table because the waiter ignored him for 6 minutes. Justice came in many forms. A man approached nervously. Mr. Warren? Sebastian looked up. The man immediately regretted existing. Excellent. I'm Attorney Wells, the man said quickly. You requested legal representation for divorce proceedings and inheritance recovery. Sebastian gestured toward the chair. Sit. Bring courage. The lawyer sat carefully. After reviewing the evidence for 20 minutes, the poor man looked spiritually exhausted. Your father could face criminal charges. He deserves worse. And your husband? The lawyer cleared his throat. Well, according to these records, Mr. Ashford secretly blocked several business attempts from your family to remove you from the company entirely. Sebastian blinked once. Interesting. Very interesting. Inside his mind, Ellis sounded stunned. Nathaniel did that. Sebastian frowned slightly. Because the files were legitimate. Nathaniel had quietly interfered multiple times over the past year, whenever Ellis's father tried pushing him completely out of shareholder meetings. Not publicly, not kindly, but consistently. That complicated things. Sebastian disliked complications. They interrupted efficient revenge. The lawyer continued nervously. There's more, Mr. Warren. Mr. Ashford also transferred personal funds into your hospital account after your accident. Ellis fell silent. Sebastian stared at the papers thoughtfully. So Nathaniel had noticed things. Just not enough. Too little, too late. The cafe television suddenly switched to breaking business news. Chairman Victor Warren has been accused of embezzlement and fraudulent share transfers involving the late Evelyn Warren's estate. Sebastian smiled slowly. Beautiful. Nature healing. The lawyer looked terrified again. You leaked this to the media? Sebastian took another sip of coffee. The media leaked it to themselves. I merely opened the cage and let greedy journalists smell blood. His phone rang suddenly. Nathaniel. Sebastian stared at the screen. Ellis whispered softly. Please answer. Sebastian sighed dramatically. Fine, but if he starts emotionally suffering too hard, I'm hanging up. He answered calmly. What? Nathaniel ignored the hostility immediately. Where are you? On a date. Silence. You're on a date? No, but you sounded jealous, so I wanted to enrich the experience. Another silence. Then Nathaniel exhaled sharply. There's a warrant being prepared for your father's arrest. I know. You knew beforehand. Ellis. I literally caused it. Another silence. Nathaniel sounded tired when he spoke again. Meet me tonight. Why? I need to tell you something. Sebastian almost refused, but something in Nathaniel's voice stopped him. Not authority, not coldness, fear. Real fear. Hours later, Sebastian arrived at the Ashford family greenhouse just after sunset. Warm golden lights glowed softly beneath glass ceilings while rain tapped gently overhead. Nathaniel stood near the roses, waiting. He looked exhausted. Good. Character development. Sebastian walked closer. You look like a divorced Victorian nobleman. Nathaniel ignored that. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nathaniel quietly asked, Who are you? Sebastian froze internally. Dangerous question. Too perceptive. Ellis panicked instantly. He knows. Relax, Sebastian answered internally. Humans never jump directly to possession. They assume trauma first. Nathaniel stepped closer slowly. You walk differently. Talk differently. You hate different foods now. Even your handwriting changed. Sebastian kept his expression calm. Maybe nearly dying changes people. Not this much. Silence stretched between them. Rain softened outside the glass. Nathaniel looked directly into his eyes. I failed you. The honesty startled both Sebastian and Alice. Nathaniel's voice lowered further. When Julian died, I convinced myself loving someone only ended badly. So I stopped trying. His hands tightened slowly at his sides. But you were standing beside me the entire time. And he laughed bitterly. I treated you like a burden I inherited. Inside Sebastian's mind, Ellis trembled painfully because this was everything he once wanted to hear. Too late. Always too late. Nathaniel stepped forward again. I know I don't deserve another chance. Correct. But I still want one. Sebastian looked at him quietly, then finally spoke. You're apologizing to the version of Ellis that learned how to survive. Nathaniel's expression shifted. Sebastian's voice softened slightly. But where were you when he was too scared to speak at all? Nathaniel had no answer. Because there wasn't one. The silence afterward felt unbearable. Then suddenly Sebastian's vision blurred violently. Pain exploded through his skull. Ellis gasped inside him. Sebastian. Another sharp pain tore through Sebastian's chest. Memories flashed rapidly. Hospital lights, machines, voices shouting, his real body waking up. Oh no. Sebastian realized it immediately. The connection was breaking. He looked up sharply at Nathaniel, and for the first time since all this began, fear hit him too, because he wasn't ready to leave Ellis alone yet. Pain dragged Sebastian upward like drowning in reverse. Voices echoed nearby. Machines beeped steadily. Something sharp pressed against his arm. Hospital again. Human existence really was just paperwork and medical bills stitched together with emotional damage. Sebastian forced his eyes open. White ceiling. Private recovery room. His own body. Oh, thank God. Being 6'2" again felt fantastic. A doctor nearly dropped the tablet when he noticed. Mr. Cross. You're awake. Sebastian's throat burned. You look distressed. You were in a coma for over a month. Skill issue. The doctor stared at him in exhausted disbelief. Fair reaction. Hours later, after surviving medical evaluations, screaming shareholders, crying employees, and one extremely dramatic aunt threatening to suit destiny itself, Sebastian finally sat alone in silence, and immediately felt something missing. No quiet voice in the back of his mind. No hesitant comments. No Ellis. The emptiness bothered him more than expected. Annoying. Across the city, Ellis Warren stood in front of a courtroom while reporters exploded into chaos around him. Cameras flashed endlessly. Mr. Warren, are the fraud allegations true? Did Chairman Warren illegally steal company shares? Is your divorce from Nathaniel Ashford finalized? Ellis inhaled slowly. 1 month ago, he would have collapsed under this pressure. Now he lifted his chin calmly. Yes, he answered evenly. The evidence speaks for itself. His father had been arrested 3 days earlier. His stepmother lost every social connection she spent years clawing for. Colin disappeared from public view after leaked recordings exposed years of manipulation and false accusations. And today, Ellis officially reclaimed ownership of Warren Corporation under his mother's name. Victory should have felt satisfying. Instead, his chest hurt because Sebastian was gone. The divorce finalized quietly 2 weeks after Sebastian disappeared from his body. Nathaniel signed immediately. No arguments, no manipulation, no desperate promises. Just one sentence, spoken softly across the lawyer's office. I hope someone finally loves you correctly. Ellis nearly cried hearing it. Because Nathaniel meant it sincerely. And because part of Ellis would probably always mourn what they could have been in another life. But not enough to go back. Never enough for that. That chapter had ended. Tonight marked Ellis's first major appearance as the new CEO of Warren Corporation. The ballroom glittered with wealth, politics, and fake smiles sharp enough to cut skin. Ellis adjusted his cufflinks nervously near the entrance. You're shaking, his assistant whispered. I'm about to face 300 rich people pretending to respect me. Ellis muttered. Naturally. Then the ballroom doors opened again, and Ellis forgot how breathing worked. Sebastian Cross walked inside wearing a black suit like he personally invented intimidation. Tall, sharp-eyed, alive. The entire room shifted subtly around him. Power recognized power. Meanwhile, Ellis's brain completely malfunctioned. Oh no, he whispered internally. His assistant frowned. Sir, that man is a problem. Sebastian spotted him immediately across the ballroom, then smiled slowly. Warm this time. Not cruel, not mocking. Just real. Ellis's heart slammed violently against his ribs, which was frankly humiliating. He was a grown man, a CEO, a successful businessman, and yet one stupid smile turned him into emotional soup. Human dignity truly remained temporary. Sebastian walked toward him through the crowd. People moved aside instinctively. Predator energy. Very illegal levels of confidence. When he finally stopped in front of Ellis, silence stretched between them. Neither spoke at first. Then Sebastian tilted his head slightly. You look healthier. Ellis laughed weakly. You stole all my fear before leaving. Something soft flickered across Sebastian's face. Good. He deserved softness after surviving this disaster of a family. For a second, neither moved. Then Ellis blurted suddenly. I looked for you. Excellent. Straight to emotional honesty. No survival instinct whatsoever. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. I searched every hospital report after hearing about Sebastian Cross waking up. Ellis continued rapidly. Then I found old business articles and realized, his voice softened. It was really you. Sebastian watched him quietly. The ballroom noise faded into background static. Ellis swallowed hard. I missed you. That one nearly destroyed Sebastian unexpectedly, because Ellis said it so simply. No manipulation, no performance, just truth. Sebastian exhaled slowly. Dangerous man. Then Ellis added in one breath. And I think I fell in love with you somewhere between threatening my father and stealing desserts from strangers. Sebastian stared at him. You remembered that? You stole 3 cakes. They were unattended. That's still theft. Morally flexible theft. Ellis laughed, a real laugh this time, bright and free. Nothing like the frightened, silent Sebastian first encountered inside that hospital room. And suddenly Sebastian realized something terrifying. He would absolutely ruin people for this man. Gladly. Ellis looked nervous again. I know this is sudden, but you talk too much when you're anxious. Ellis froze. Sebastian stepped closer, then quietly said, You were already my fiancé before any of this happened. Silence. What? Sebastian reached inside his suit pocket and pulled out an old photograph. 2 young women smiled brightly at the camera while standing arm in arm beneath cherry blossom trees. On the back, faded handwriting read, Our children will definitely marry each other someday. Ellis's eyes widened slowly. Sebastian explained quietly, Our mothers were best friends in high school before moving away. They promised their firstborn children would marry someday. He pulled out 2 tiny silver bracelets next, one engraved with Ellis, the other Sebastian. My mother spent years searching after we lost contact. Sebastian's voice softened slightly. I continued after she died. Ellis's eyes turned red instantly. You were looking for me? For years. The ballroom disappeared entirely around them. No cameras, no business rivals, no painful past. Just 2 people standing there after surviving enough loneliness to last several lifetimes. Ellis laughed shakily through tears. So technically, Sebastian smirked faintly. Yes, the universe apparently trapped me inside your body because fate lacks subtlety. Ellis covered his face, half laughing, half crying. That sounds insane. It was deeply inconvenient. But you still came back. Sebastian's expression gentled. Always would. And this time, when Sebastian reached for him, Ellis didn't hesitate at all, because for the first time in his life, someone chose him first. Not the stand-in, not the replacement, not the unwanted son, just Ellis, exactly as he was. Somewhere far away, the storm finally ended. Rain tapped softly against the apartment windows while the city lights blurred gold and silver outside. For once, everything felt quiet. No reporters, no lawsuits, no revenge plans, no war and family disasters crawling out of hell like emotionally unstable cockroaches. Just peace. Ellis sat curled against Sebastian on the massive living room couch, wearing one of Sebastian's black sweaters that swallowed him whole. The sleeves covered half his hands. Sebastian glanced down from the business report he was pretending to read. You've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes. Ellis murmured sleepily. I'm multitasking. You're holding the report upside down. A pause. Corporate innovation. Ellis laughed softly against his shoulder. That sound still affected Sebastian in deeply inconvenient ways. A few months ago, Ellis barely spoke above a whisper. Now he laughed easily, argued confidently, and occasionally stole food directly from Sebastian's plate with absolutely no fear of death. Growth. Beautiful. Terrifying. The television played quietly in the background while rain filled the silence between them. Ellis traced lazy circles against Sebastian's hand. Then his voice softened slightly. There's something I still don't understand. Sebastian hummed. Only one thing. Your recovery is progressing rapidly. Ellis pinched his side immediately. Sebastian barely reacted. Violence again, he sighed. This relationship lacks emotional safety. You deserve worse. True. Ellis shifted closer against him before speaking again. The accidents. The room grew quieter. Even the rain suddenly sounded distant. Ellis looked down at their intertwined hands. You knew something before anyone else did. Back then, in the hospital, the way you reacted to the message. Sebastian's expression steeled slightly. This conversation. Honestly, he'd expected it earlier. Humans eventually demanded emotional honesty in relationships. Very unreasonable behavior. Ellis lifted his head slowly. Who caused it? For a moment, Sebastian said nothing. Then he closed the report quietly and set it aside. The movement alone made Ellis tense, because Sebastian only became this serious when something truly mattered. Finally, Sebastian spoke. Victor Warren. Ellis froze instantly. His father. He arranged both accidents. Sebastian's voice came out flat and cold. Rain continued against the glass while Ellis stared at him silently. Sebastian exhaled slowly before continuing. At first, I was only searching for your family. My mother kept trying to find hers for years. She never forgot the promise they made. After she died, I found letters, old addresses, and business documents connected to Warren Corporation. His expression hardened. I discovered Evelyn Warren's missing inheritance shares, forged legal transfers, shell companies tied to Victor Warren, and financial corruption hidden inside the company. The deeper I investigated, the uglier things became. Then I found you, or rather, evidence of what your life had become. Sebastian's jaw tightened slightly. You disappeared from public records for years. No social events, no interviews, almost no photographs unless your family forced you into them. When I finally saw you at your wedding announcement, you looked miserable. Ellis lowered his eyes. Of course his family hated displaying him publicly unless necessary. Sebastian looked at him carefully. Victor eventually discovered someone was investigating the company finances. He also realized you were still the legal heir to your mother's shares. So he wanted both problems gone. He arranged my car accident while planning your hospital accident this same night. Ellis went pale instantly. So when I fell down those stairs, you didn't fall. You were pushed. Silence crashed down. Ellis suddenly remembered fragments he'd buried years ago. A hand behind him. The smell of alcohol. Someone arguing downstairs moments before the fall. His father's unusually calm face at the hospital afterward. Oh God. His own father really tried to kill him. Ellis's hands started shaking immediately. Sebastian reached over and wrapped an arm around his waist. Automatically, protectively, steady. For a moment, neither spoke. Rain filled the silence softly. Finally, Ellis whispered, "If everything had gone normally, would you still have found me?" Sebastian looked down at him. Such a dangerous question. Because the answer mattered more than revenge now. More than fate, more than possession. This question asked something simpler. Would you have chosen me anyway? Sebastian touched Ellis's hair gently. I was already trying to. That nearly broke him. Ellis's eyes burned instantly. Sebastian sighed softly above him. You know, he muttered. Most people flirt normally. We apparently required attempted murder and supernatural identity theft. A weak laugh escaped Ellis. Sebastian continued dryly. The universe has terrible communication skills. Ellis finally looked up at him. But you still came back. Sebastian's expression softened completely now. Always dangerous when Ellis looked at him like that. Too trusting, too open, too precious. I told you before, Sebastian murmured quietly. Always would. Ellis kissed him before Sebastian could say anything else. Soft, warm, certain, no fear left in it anymore. And as Sebastian pulled him closer against the sound of rain and distant city lights, one thought settled quietly between them both. After everything that tried to tear them apart, they still found each other in the end. The ballroom around them had faded into a blur of champagne flutes and whispered speculation. Ellis barely noticed the stares, the curious glances, the way people leaned toward each other to murmur behind their hands. All he could focus on was Sebastian's hand in his. Warm, solid, real. We should probably leave, Sebastian murmured. his gray eyes scanning the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years navigating hostile environments. Before someone's jealousy curdles the champagne, Ellis laughed, the sound still bright and unfamiliar even to himself. You mean before someone interrogates us? Same thing. They slipped out through a side exit, past a startled server, and into a quiet corridor lined with old portraits. The noise of the ballroom faded behind them, replaced by the soft echo of their footsteps on marble. Neither spoke until they reached the private courtyard garden, where moonlight spilled over white roses and the air smelled sweet and cool. Ellis stopped beside a stone bench, suddenly aware of how fast his heart was beating. So, he said, turning to face Sebastian. That happened. Sebastian leaned against a stone pillar, arms crossed, looking unfairly composed for someone who had just confessed to a decade-long search across 2 lifetimes. Which part? The part where I admitted I've been hunting for you since before either of us understood why, or the part where I stole 3 cakes? Both. All of it. Ellis shook his head. I still can't believe you were inside my head. I can. Sebastian's voice softened. You felt like home. The words landed somewhere deep in Alice's chest, cracking open something he'd kept locked for years. He looked away, toward the moonlit roses, and forced himself to breathe. I spent so long believing no one would ever choose me, he said quietly. Not my family, not Nathaniel, not anyone. I thought if I just stayed small enough, quiet enough, maybe they'd forget to hurt me. Sebastian pushed off from the pillar and crossed the space between them. His hand came up to cup Ellis's jaw, tilting his face back toward him. You're not small, he said. You were never small. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to believe you were. Ellis's throat tightened. And you? I've been looking for you since I was old enough to understand what my mother's promise meant. Sebastian's thumb brushed across his cheekbone. I just didn't know your name yet. Ellis woke the next morning in Sebastian's apartment, a sleek, modern space high above the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the sunrise into something almost spiritual. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Then he felt the warm weight of an arm draped over his waist, and Sebastian's steady breathing against his shoulder, and everything clicked into place. He turned his head carefully. Sebastian's dark hair was tousled, his sharp features softened by sleep. He looked younger like this, less like the terrifying businessman who had dismantled empires for breakfast, and more like the man who had held Ellis's hand in the dark while his body fought for survival. Ellis's chest ached with something too big to name. He didn't move, didn't want to break the spell. But eventually, Sebastian's eyes opened, gray and sharp even in the first light of morning. You're staring, Sebastian murmured. You're beautiful when you're not threatening people. I'm beautiful when I'm threatening people too. Ellis laughed softly. Modest, realistic. Sebastian's hand slid from Ellis's waist to his hand, fingers intertwining. The gesture was so simple, so intimate, that Ellis felt his breath catch. No regrets? Sebastian asked. Ellis thought about it. About the years of silence, the loneliness, the way he'd learned to apologize for existing. Then he looked at Sebastian, at the man who had crossed into his body, fought his battles, and then crossed back just to find him again. No, he said. Not a single one. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of public appearances and private moments. The tabloids had a field day with the new CEO of Warren Corporation and a ruthless businessman who had apparently been searching for him for years. Fairy tale romance or corporate merger? One headline blared. Another, more cynical, called it the most expensive love story ever sold. Ellis learned to ignore them. Sebastian found it more difficult. I could buy those publications and shut them down. He offered one evening, reading a particularly vicious article over Ellis's shoulder. You could, Ellis agreed. But then what would your lawyers do for fun? Sebastian made a face. You're no fun. I'm plenty of fun. I just prefer my fun without lawsuits. The Warren Corporation restructuring was brutal. Ellis spent hours in meetings with lawyers, accountants, and board members who had once answered to his father. Some of them resisted. Some of them tried to negotiate. Ellis, channeling every lesson he'd learned from watching Sebastian operate, held firm. This isn't a negotiation, he told the holdouts. This is a notification. My mother built this company. My father stole it. I'm taking it back. You can either help me rebuild it, or you can leave. There's no third option. One by one, they fell in line. Sebastian watched from the sidelines, never interfering, always present. After particularly difficult meetings, he'd have coffee waiting, black with cinnamon, exactly how Ellis liked it. After the board finally approved the full transfer of shares, he showed up with a bottle of champagne and an expression of quiet pride that made Ellis's heart stutter. "You did it," Sebastian said. "We did it." Ellis took the champagne. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Sebastian's gaze softened. "You could have. It just would have taken longer and involved more tears. I don't cry." "You cried during a commercial about a dog last week. That dog was lost for 3 days, Sebastian. 3 days. Nathaniel Ashford kept his distance. He didn't call, didn't visit, didn't send flowers or notes, or any of the gestures that might have signaled an attempt at reconciliation. The divorce papers had been signed and filed, and apart from the necessary legal communications, there was nothing. Ellis told himself he was relieved. He told himself he'd moved on. He told himself that the ache he felt when he thought about Nathaniel was just old grief, not new longing. Sebastian noticed, because Sebastian noticed everything. "You're thinking about him," Sebastian said one night, when they were lying in bed and Ellis had gone quiet. "No. Your left hand keeps twitching. You do that when you're lying." Ellis sighed. "I'm not lying. I'm processing." "Processing what?" "The fact that he signed the divorce papers without a fight. The fact that he told his lawyer he hoped someone would love me correctly." Ellis stared at the ceiling. "The fact that he meant it." Sebastian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "People can regret things without being entitled to forgiveness." "I know. Do you want to forgive him?" Ellis turned his head to look at Sebastian. "I don't know what I want. I spent 2 years married to a man who never saw me. And now he sees me, but it's too late. And part of me feels guilty for moving on so fast. Another part of me feels guilty for not feeling guiltier." Sebastian reached over and took his hand. "That's a lot of guilt. I'm very talented." "You are." Sebastian pressed a kiss to his knuckles. "But you don't owe him your guilt. You don't owe him anything. He made his choices. You're allowed to make yours." Ellis closed his eyes. "What if I hurt him? Then he'll survive. He's a grown man. He can manage his own feelings." "That's very practical. I'm a very practical person." Ellis laughed despite himself. "You're impossible. And yet you're still here. And yet I'm still here." Ellis agreed. The confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday, 3 months after the ballroom. Ellis was leaving a meeting at Warren headquarters when he saw Nathaniel standing in the lobby, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. The rain streaked the windows behind him, turning the city into a gray watercolor. Ellis's assistant stopped mid-sentence. "Should I?" "Give us a moment," Ellis said quietly. The assistant disappeared. Ellis walked toward Nathaniel, his heart pounding in a rhythm he didn't recognize. "Nathaniel." "Ellis." Nathaniel's voice was even, controlled, the same voice he used in boardrooms. But there was something underneath it now. Something wrong. "You could have called," Ellis said. "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." "That's not an answer." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "I've been trying to figure out what to say for 3 months. I've written you 100 letters in my head, deleted all of them. Why are you here now?" Nathaniel looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment, the mask slipped. Underneath was exhaustion, grief, and something that looked frighteningly like hope. "Because I read about the Warren Corporation restructuring," he said. Because I saw your picture in the business section. Because you were smiling. Really smiling. And I realized I'd never seen you do that before. Not once in 2 years. Ellis's throat tightened. Nathaniel, I'm not here to ask for anything. Nathaniel held up a hand. I know I don't have the right. I know I missed my chance. I needed to see you. To tell you that I'm sorry. Not because I want forgiveness. Because you deserved an apology, and I never gave you one. The lobby was quiet around them. A few employees glanced their way, then quickly looked elsewhere. Ellis took a slow breath. Okay. I accept your apology. But that doesn't change anything. Nathaniel nodded slowly. I know. I'm with Sebastian now. I know that too. And I'm happy. Nathaniel's expression flickered. Pain, quickly suppressed. I can see that. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ellis stepped forward and, before he could think better of it, hugged him. It was brief, awkward, and probably foolish, but Nathaniel stiffened for only a second before his arms came up around Ellis's back, holding him carefully, like he was afraid of breaking something already shattered. When they pulled apart, Nathaniel's eyes were bright. Take care of yourself, Alice said. You too. Nathaniel's voice was rough. And Ellis? Yes. He's a good man. Sebastian. I looked into him. He's been searching for you for years. That kind of devotion, it's rare. Don't let fear ruin it. Ellis smiled. Small, genuine. I won't. Nathaniel nodded once, then turned and walked out into the rain. Ellis watched him go, feeling something old and heavy finally lift from his chest. Not forgiveness, not closure, but something close. Something that felt like peace. Sebastian proposed 6 months later. It wasn't grand or elaborate. No flash mobs, no skywriting, no dramatic declarations. Just the two of them, sitting on the balcony of their apartment, watching the city lights flicker below. I have something for you, Sebastian said, reaching into his pocket. Ellis raised an eyebrow. If it's another cake, I swear. Sebastian pulled out a small velvet box. Ellis's heart stopped. I've been carrying this around for 3 weeks, Sebastian admitted, trying to find the right moment. But every time I thought about it, I realized there's no such thing as the right moment. There's just now. He opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum band. Elegant, understated, perfect. I've been looking for you my whole life, Sebastian said. Before I knew your name, before I knew your face, before I knew anything except that somewhere out there, someone was waiting for me. And then I found you. And then I lost you. And then I found you again. His voice roughened. I don't want to lose you again, Alice. Not ever. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Ellis was crying. Of course he was crying. He'd cried at dog commercials and sad movies, and the moment Sebastian first kissed him in the ring. This was no different. Yes, he managed. Yes, you impossible, terrifying, wonderful man. Yes. Sebastian slid the ring onto his finger, then pulled him into a kiss that tasted like salt and champagne and the beginning of forever. They married in a small ceremony at the Ashford family greenhouse, the same place where Sebastian had first admitted he was in Alice. It felt right, somehow, to return there, to reclaim the space for something new. Evelyn Ashford attended, much to Sebastian's apparent consternation. She'd taken a liking to Alice, and, surprisingly, to Sebastian, and had appointed herself the unofficial wedding planner. I don't need a floral arch, Sebastian had protested. Everyone needs a floral arch, Evelyn had replied. It's called romance. Look it up. The guest list was small, close friends, a few trusted colleagues, and no one from the Warren family. Ellis's father was in prison, his stepmother had fled the country, and Colin had vanished into obscurity after the leaked recordings destroyed his reputation. Ellis felt no guilt about their absence. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. Sebastian stood beneath the floral arch in a black suit, his gray eyes fixed on Ellis as he walked down the aisle. His expression was unreadable, controlled, careful, but Ellis could see the tremor in his hands. When Ellis reached him, Sebastian took his hands and held them tight. "You're shaking," Ellis whispered. "So are you." "I'm nervous." "You're never nervous." "I'm always nervous. I'm just very good at hiding it." The officiant, a warm, silver-haired beta who had married half the city's power couples, cleared her throat. "Dearly beloved." The vows were short, honest, and perfect. "I spent my whole life waiting for someone to choose me," Ellis said, looking at Sebastian. "And then you showed up inside my head, threatened my family, stole my desserts, and refused to leave. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt, for the first time, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be." Sebastian's grip tightened. "I promise to fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. I promise to hold you when the world gets too heavy. I promise to steal you cakes whenever you want them, even if they're unattended and technically belong to someone else." Ellis laughed. "And I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you know, every single day, that you were chosen. Not because of fate or destiny or our mother's promises. Because of you. Because you're worth choosing." Sebastian's jaw was tight, his eyes bright. "I'm not good at words," he said. "I'm good at action. So I'll keep this simple. I searched for you for years without knowing your name. I found you inside a hospital room, trapped in a body that wasn't mine, surrounded by people who tried to destroy you. And I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for." He took a breath. "I will never stop looking for you, Alice. Even when you're right beside me. I will wake up every morning and find you again. I will protect you, fight for you, and absolutely ruin anyone who tries to hurt you. I will love you until the day I die, and probably after, because I'm stubborn and I don't believe in letting death have the last word." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. "So," Sebastian finished, "in summary, yes. I choose you. I will always choose you. Now kiss me before I say something embarrassing." Ellis kissed him. The crowd applauded. Evelyn Ashford dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. And somewhere far away, the rain that had been threatening all morning finally began to fall. Soft, gentle, like the world itself was sighing in relief. The first anniversary of their wedding fell on a Sunday. Ellis woke to the smell of coffee, and something else, something sweet and slightly burnt. He smiled, already knowing what he'd find. Sebastian stood in the kitchen of their apartment, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook" in glittery letters, a gift from Evelyn, attempting to flip pancakes with the concentration of a man defusing a bomb. "You're doing it wrong," Ellis said, leaning against the doorway. "I'm doing it exactly right. The pancakes are just expressive. They're on fire." Sebastian looked down. The pancake in the pan was, in fact, on fire. He calmly picked up the pan, carried it to the sink, and ran water over it. Character development. Ellis laughed, a full, bright sound that still made Sebastian's heart skip after all this time. "I love you," Ellis said. Sebastian set the pan down and crossed the kitchen to wrap his arms around Ellis's waist. "I love you too. Even when you mock my cooking. Especially when I mock your cooking." Debatable. They ate breakfast on the balcony. The pancakes were mostly edible, and the coffee was perfect. Watching the city wake up below them. The sky was clear, the air warm, and somewhere in the distance, a bird sang. "1 year," Ellis said. "1 year," Sebastian agreed. "Does it feel like it's been longer or shorter?" Sebastian considered. "Both. It feels like you've always been here. And also like I blinked and a year disappeared." Ellis leaned against him. "That's very poetic for someone who claims to be bad at words." "I'm not bad at words. I'm selectively eloquent. Is that what we're calling it?" "It's what I'm calling it. You can call it whatever you want. That's the beauty of marriage." They stayed on the balcony long after breakfast, watching the city move around them, content in the quiet certainty of being loved. The Warren Corporation was thriving under Ellis's leadership. He'd hired new executives, implemented ethical policies, and established a foundation in his mother's name to support Omega entrepreneurs. Sebastian helped where he could, mostly by intimidating board members and funding philanthropic initiatives. But mostly, he stayed in the background, watching Ellis shine. "You're staring again," Ellis said, catching his eye. "I'm admiring." "Same thing." "No, staring is passive. Admiring is active. There's intention behind it." Ellis shook his head, smiling. "You're impossible. And yet you married me. And yet I married you." Sebastian pulled him closer, and they watched the sun climb higher, grateful for every moment they had, and for all the moments still to come. Years later, when they were old and gray and the world had changed around them, Ellis and Sebastian sat on the same balcony, watching the same city lights. Her children were grown now. Twins, a boy and a girl, adopted from a troubled pack that Sebastian had helped dismantle. They'd inherited Ellis's quiet determination and Sebastian's sharp tongue, and they were the pride of their father's lives. "Do you ever regret it?" Ellis asked, his voice soft with age. Sebastian turned to look at him, at the wrinkles around his eyes, the silver in his hair, the same gentle smile that had first caught his attention in a hospital room decades ago. "Regret what?" "Any of it. The accidents. The possession. The years of searching." Sebastian took his hand. "No. Not even a little. Not even a little." He pressed a kiss to Ellis's knuckles. "Every terrible thing that happened led me to you. And if I had to live through it all again, the crash, the coma, the chaos, I would, in a heartbeat." Ellis's eyes glistened. "You're sentimental in your old age." "I've always been sentimental. I just used to hide it better." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of the city, the hum of traffic, the laughter of strangers, the quiet pulse of life continuing. "Thank you," Ellis said finally. "For what?" "For finding me. For staying. For teaching me that I was worth finding." Sebastian's grip tightened. "You were always worth finding, Alice. You just didn't know it yet." The stars came out, one by one, and the city sparkled below them. And in that moment, in that perfect, quiet moment, Ellis knew that he had finally, truly, come home. The rain started just before midnight. Ellis was already in bed, half asleep, when he felt the mattress shift. Sebastian slid in beside him, still smelling faintly of rain and the coffee he'd been drinking in his study. His skin was cool from the balcony door he'd left open too long. "You're cold," Ellis murmured, not opening his eyes. "I'm refreshing." "You're refrigerated." Sebastian huffed a quiet laugh and pulled Ellis closer, tucking his cold feet between Ellis's warm ones. Ellis yelped and tried to shove him away, but Sebastian held on. "This is abuse," Ellis mumbled. "This is marriage." Same thing. The rain drummed against the windows, steady and soothing. Somewhere in the apartment, the old grandfather clock that Sebastian had inherited from his mother ticked toward 1 in the morning. The twins were asleep in their rooms, the dog was curled at the foot of the bed, and for a moment, everything felt exactly as it should be. "I was thinking," Sebastian said quietly. "Dangerous. About my mother." Ellis opened his eyes. Sebastian's face was half in shadow, his expression unreadable. But his voice was softer than usual, the voice he used only when the world was dark and they were alone. "What about her?" "She used to tell me that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections fit yours." Sebastian's thumb traced idle patterns on Ellis's back. "I didn't understand what she meant until I met you." Ellis's chest tightened. "I'm not sure my imperfections are the fitting kind. More than this person has been through significant emotional damage kind." "Same thing." "No, it's really not." Sebastian tilted his head so he could look at Ellis directly. In the dim light, his gray eyes looked almost silver. "You spent years being told you were too much and not enough at the same time. You learned to make yourself small because everyone around you needed you to be invisible. And then I showed up inside your head, and started a war. You started a war? I absolutely started a war. On your behalf. Without your permission. And instead of being terrified, you what? Let me? Trusted me. Ellis was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think part of me knew, even then, that you weren't like the others. That you saw me. I saw you because you let me. I didn't have a choice. You were in my brain. Sebastian laughed softly. Fair point. The rain continued, filling the silence with something close to music. I'm glad you stayed, Ellis said eventually. After everything. When you could have walked away. When it would have been easier to walk away. You stayed. Sebastian pressed a kiss to his forehead. Always. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. Ellis closed his eyes again, letting the warmth of Sebastian's body and the sound of the rain pull him towards sleep. But just before he drifted off, he whispered, I love you. I know, Sebastian murmured. I love you too. Now go to sleep before you say something embarrassing. You're embarrassing. I'm the CEO of a multinational corporation. I'm never embarrassing. Ellis smiled against his chest and let himself fall. In the morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the dog was licking Sebastian's hand, demanding breakfast. Ellis pretended to be asleep while Sebastian sighed dramatically and extracted himself from the bed. I see how it is, Sebastian muttered. You stay warm. I feed the animals. You're very good at it. Ellis said without opening his eyes. Flattery won't get you out of making coffee. Flattery already got me out of making coffee. You're making it. Sebastian made an offended sound and shuffled toward the kitchen. Ellis heard him pause at the doorway. Ellis. Thank you. For staying too. Ellis opened his eyes. Sebastian was backlit by the morning light, looking soft and rumpled and nothing like the cold, terrifying so, the world thought they knew. Go make coffee, Ellis said. Then come back to bed. Sebastian's smile was small and genuine and absolutely devastating. Yes, sir. And as Ellis listened to the sounds of his husband moving through their home, the clink of coffee cups, the soft whistle of the kettle, the happy bark of the dog, he thought that ordinary mornings were, perhaps, the most extraordinary gift of all.